Some movies change cinema forever. Movies that define genres, become a source of inspiration for many artists, or the basis for comparison of all following similar films. The Godfather is one of those movies. It is one of the most famous films of all time, and almost every person on earth has either seen it or at least knows a scene or a quotation from it. But it was also the movie that created many of the popular stereotypes surrounding the Mafia, its members, and also about Italians and Italian Americans, even though that was not the intention behind the film.
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Delta del Tempo. Before beginning with today's video, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our releases. The topic of today's video, as you may have already understood, is the 1972 movie The Godfather by Francis Ford Coppola. The movie tells the story of the Corleone family, which is the most important mafia family in New York in the mid-40s after World War II. We see the events mostly from the perspectives of the father, Vito, and the youngest son, Michael, and we are shown in detail how these people live, their beliefs, and all the violence intrinsic to those things. The movie is an adaptation of Mario Puzo's homonymous novel, which was a huge bestseller in the late 60s and served as an inspiration for the events narrated also in the second part of the Godfather trilogy, and was commissioned to Coppola by Paramount Pictures. In the beginning, he was reluctant to join the project, but he decided to accept the offer because of the financial problems of his own production company, the American Zoetrope. At that time, he was only 32 and had published only a couple of movies, so the production did not trust him. But Coppola fought to gain full control over all the aspects of the realization of The Godfather, starting from the choice of the actors, as he insisted to cast Marlon Brando, who wasn't at the top of his career, and the almost unknown Al Pacino. He also contributed to the scripting process, deciding to change the setting from St. Louis to New York and hide Nino Rota and Gordon Willis as the composer and the cinematographer respectively. These autorial choices are evident in the movie, and it is clear that Coppola did more than a simple movie on commission, but he realized it with all his craft and passion. In particular, a great work has been made on cinematography and direction. Since the first sequence, the wedding one, it is possible to understand that Coppola and Willis had a precise idea on how to realize the movie. The colors are warm, and the shadows are cleverly used to differentiate between the mood of the wedding party and the one inside Vito's study. Also, the wideness of the shots changes between the two scenes to highlight a fundamental difference between the family life of the Corleone family, full of joy and wealth, and their business, made of violence and undeniable proposals. Coppola, together with Puzo, did an excellent job in adapting the source novel. Even if the movie is almost 3 hours long, it is never boring nor tiresome because of the many plot twists, and even the scenes that seem less relevant leave something to the audience. The characters are well written, the main ones in particular, and they evolve through the story and seem real, and the spectator is able to identify with them. This is most certainly due to the actors featured in the movie. All the casting choices, made for the most part by Coppola himself, are perfect. Every side character has the right face and acts terrifically, and then there are Brando and Pacino. Brando probably executed one of the greatest performances in cinema history. His Vito Corleone is a powerful man that commands respect and intimidates others with his mere presence. But during the story, we see how the man changes, how his body and his heart break, from gunshots, but also because of the unlucky fate of his children. And before his end, we observe a man that is no more the Godfather, but just a father and grandfather, with all the love he feels towards his family on full display. All these changes and different moments are perfectly portrayed by Brando, that enrich the movie with his ideas. He convinced the production to hire him when he stuffed his mouth with cotton and made an impression of the character during his audition, and also improvised the scene between Vito and his grandchild, repeating on set a game he played with his own child. Also, Pacino skillfully portrayed his character. His Michael changes from a young war hero who considers himself different from his father and family to a man who embraces completely and fiercely his father's role. This is demonstrated by the progressive transformation of Michael's appearance and expressions that little by little seem to resemble Vito's once. This performance from Pacino, who was almost unknown to the general public at the moment, launched his career as a top movie star and confirmed how Coppola made all the right decisions while producing this movie. Coppola and his collaborators also decided to fill the movie with symbols and references to the Italian or Italian-American culture. In fact, food has a prominent role in the movie. In almost all important scenes, the characters are either eating or are placed around a dining table, and Coppola even inserted a scene whose purpose was to gift the spectator with a recipe for a good Italian tomato sauce. But above all other foods, there is one that is omnipresent in the movie: oranges. Even though Coppola and his collaborators stated that oranges, with their bright color, were just a scenic device, they almost seem to represent an omen for the characters on the screen. With their color, they seem to reference gold and wealth, which are the things all these characters want to achieve, but also greed, and the violence one is willing to perpetrate to satiate it, leading to an inevitable demise. Religion has an essential role too. The two main scenes of the movie, the beginning wedding one and the climax of the movie during the baptism, create a compelling contrast between the beliefs and cultural Catholic heritage of the Corleone family and what they do to live, all their violence and killings. This strong bond with religion seems like an excuse for the characters, as if everything they do is righteous in the end just because they have the appearance to be devoted believers. But, and this is a curious phenomenon, the word Godfather was never used in Italy to address a boss or a family leader. In a completely opposite way, it was a derogatory term, devoid of any religious connotation, to reference lowly criminals. Religion and mafia always had a strong bond, as many Italian infamous bosses were devoted Catholics, wearing crosses and praying frequently, such as Bernardo Provenzano, one of the most powerful and violent mafia leaders ever, and others were even nicknamed Il Papa, the Pope, or with similar religion-inspired names. Also, Cosa Nostra's punishments have been inspired by the ones of the Church's Inquisition. For example, a scarred face is a symbol of disgrace for mafiosi, and disfiguring the heretics was a common practice for inquisitors. On the other hand, in America seems that Italian immigrants, wanting to keep a strong connection with their cultural heritage, changed their focus towards the rituality of religion, depriving those of their spiritual meaning and using them just to exert control and power within and among families. But as Italians, it seems strange to view mafia bosses as apparently respectable, refined, and wise men, living their life in the open, enjoying their lives and wealth with their families, while we know that these people often live underground in bunkers without expensive furniture and even alone. They cannot benefit from the riches they accumulate, nor live freely. Also, they do not appear like respectable men. They are uncouth and violent and do not wear fancy clothes. It is almost impossible to understand why they willingly choose to live like this, and they most definitely are not cool or captivating life models. Here lies one of the greatest critics to the movie: to give a completely different image to mafiosi, to make them charming, and to make their lives and business almost attractive. And clearly, the movie does this. The spectator never questions the actions of the Corleone family. We see all the events from their perspective, we empathize and identify with them until the movie shows us their hypocrisy in the baptism scene. And then the movie reaches its end as it begins, from the perspective of the Godfather. And while in the beginning we see the person looking at him with reverence and almost devotion, in the end we look at the new Godfather as his own wife does, with fear and disgust for the man he has become. And as the door closes and the movie ends, we are left with this feeling of remorse, because we thought that the ways of such a monster were rightful and just. And we hope that every person that has seen or will see this masterpiece will feel the same, because as Italians, we know very well that Mafia is never charming, enticing or honorable, but it is just something destructive, full of violence, greed and vileness. We hope you liked this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment with your thoughts and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Ciao a tutti.